Good evening, Law 501 students. I thought I would try this method of communicating with you. I'm sure you're as tired of lengthy announcements as I am of typing them. Um, I'm a pretty good typist, but there's a lot of information to cover. So, you're almost halfway done with this course already, if you can believe that. We're about to move into session 3. This is where we get to put the capital into capitalism. We're finally really going to get hardcore on business law as opposed to just the general legal environment. So to recap what you've covered so far, an introduction to legal systems, a very, very high level overview of court procedure and the structure of the court system, um, the idea of precedent and how the law is formed in this country in the common law system and the constitutional system that was given to us 250-ish years ago by our Anglo-American system, our Anglo-American founding fathers. We then moved into a very brief high-level overview of the various categories of law: contracts, property, torts, civil versus criminal, those sorts of ideas. Those are the disciplines of the law where liability comes from, if you will. You might be liable or obligated to perform a contract. You might be liable for negligence. The most common example that people are most familiar with is a car accident. You may own property, and you have certain rights regarding that, and it's possible to infringe people's property rights. Think about trespass and those sorts of issues. We're now going to be moving into business entities. There's a number of ways to do business. Sole proprietorship, that's the easiest. That's just you go into business for yourself. You don't have any particular formal structure because it's just you and your own money. And you perform services or make goods and do your best to turn a profit, which is your income. A little more complex is a partnership. That's two or more people associating together voluntarily to carry on a business. Partners really need to trust each other. It's possible to have a partnership without a written document. It is the form of business organization in which one person is most broadly liable for the actions of another, because partners are liable for each other, not just in their finances, but in their behavior. It helps to have a partnership agreement that's written down. So we've moved from partnerships to various sort of more complex or fancier sorts of partnerships. What we're really trying to do there is limit the liability, because general partnerships are very, very broad liability. So you will read about limited partnerships and limited liability partnerships. As those names suggest, what the creators of those particular business forms were trying to do is to adjust or change or alter the liability of partners and investors for each other, and to also change or adjust, loosen up, broaden, whatever the right word is, the way in which a partnership can be capitalized or financed. Limited partnerships allow for a type of member owner of the business to participate in a limited way that is primarily as an investor. That's what a limited partner is. Moving on from that, we then arrive at the corporation. Corporations have sort of become, in a way, an emblem of all that is bad about capitalism lately. Um, at one time in history, I think they were the emblem of all that is good about capitalism. Um, there was a bit of the American dream, if you will, that used to involve um, the pride of working for a well established and well financed corporation. So, what a corporation form does for its owners is structure the way in which investments in the corporation are made so that the corporation is capitalized or financed. And it protects those investors from having any real significant personal liability for the decisions made by the officers and managers who are operating the business. As you can easily imagine, let's just take IBM or Apple as our example. Most of us probably never knew Steve Jobs, but we may have invested in Apple either directly in its stock or indirectly through a mutual fund that owns its stock. And we probably didn't even know when the annual meetings of the board of directors or of the shareholders happened, much less what was decided there. Should we investors be held personally liable for the decisions that management made? Probably not. That's the advantage of the corporate form. And it was that protection that enabled corporations to be so successful at raising the kind of large capital that was needed to drive business forward from its beginnings at, let's say, the beginning of the Industrial Revolution to what we see today in American business. And now I'm waxing historic. I'll stop. So, this week's assignments. The discussion asks you what businesses you've worked with over the years, what types of organization did they represent, strengths and weaknesses, would you structure it differently, and why? Particularly with regard to the strengths and weaknesses. Please do not talk about personalities or psychology. This is a business law class, not a psychology of organizations class. So the kinds of strengths and weaknesses that I'm really looking for a response here are strengths and weaknesses with regard to the structural form of the company. Was it effective for the business to be run as a corporation or as a partnership or as a sole proprietorship? Would the business have been able to do more or produce more effectively if it had been structured differently or financed differently? Those are the kinds of questions that you should think about as you frame your answer there, because that is, after all, the subject of the reading. I'm not asking you if you liked your boss or the company's greatest weakness was that the managers were terrible or something like that. That's not the point. The point here is the business organizational form. So when it asks you if you would structure the company differently, we're not talking about chain of command. We're talking about the board of directors, the officers, the partnership, the way the partners interacted, if that's what form it was, those sorts of questions. I hope that is helpful to you and clear. The internet assignment should be pretty simple. What you're doing here is looking up a business document and answering some questions about it. When I tested this link to the Secretary of State in the State of Colorado's website, the link worked fine. But that was several weeks ago, and Colorado.gov is a website whose owners like to rearrange it rather frequently. So it's hard to maintain good links into that website. If something is broken, please tell me as soon as you know that, and I will fix it or get an alternative assignment put together or something. And I'll just say generally, anytime you have a problem, please email me and let me know. If you're sick, if some terrible problem has happened, please let me know. We can work with that. Okay, case study. Here's where we're back to the case study analysis format that I emailed you about. Please try to use IRAC to analyze these cases. Just glancing at these cases, I thought, these are pretty esoteric business topics. kind of dry, could be kind of hard to follow what's going on in the cases. There's going to be some terminology. Some of it is important, and some of it is what I will say are relics due to the age of some of the cases. We use less Latin now than we used to as lawyers. Um, but don't hesitate to click open a dictionary and look up words if you need to. Um, please do that rather than trying to guess and maybe ending up using them wrong. So there's your overview of what you're going to be doing this week in session 3. I hope you found the video helpful. If it's not, feel free to give me feedback. If it is, feel free to give me feedback. I'd like to find a way to communicate with you all that you find useful and helpful and timely. So I'm trying this tonight. I hope this helps. I'm praying for you all this week as you tackle this assignment. I know that I'm starting to need an energy infusion, shall we say, after getting through all of the grading from week 1. And I'm going to get week 2 done as quickly as I can for you. I was trying to give you a lot of feedback to enable you to direct your efforts in the right paths to succeed in this class. I'll just say again, remember the point is this is a business law class. It's not a history class, a politics class, or a psychology class. It's about business law. So please stay on topic and stay focused. Thank you for your hard work so far, and I'll thank you in advance for your hard work in the week ahead. God bless you. Good night.